Well, usually the trick or treats only come at Halloween time. This digging in session, this is a treat. Talking about a colossal, massive caniac, literally. John Isner joins me. He's deep in the heart of Texas. And boy, partner, as I start every show, I've got to ask you, how do you define a man that emerged victorious in the longest tennis match in history 10 years ago at Wimbledon? How do you define digging in is?
Oh, wow. I tell you what, Tripper, that match you're referring to, that's something that I never could have imagined myself, of course, being a part of, but also, competing, I guess, that hard. I've always considered myself a very good competitor, but to compete that hard for that long, I definitely surprised myself. But when it comes down to it, and when you're in the thick of a competitive battle, you just don't want to give an inch. And it's as simple as that. And that's what I did over the course of those 3 days, even though I was, of course, physically exhausted, and even more so than that, mentally tired as well. I kept digging in, kept digging in my heels, and just went to work and went up to bat and kept swinging away. And then eventually I was, of course, able to win.
That against a very fine Frenchman, Nicolas Mahou. Do you remember?
Well done on the pronunciation there.
Yeah, I have trouble with the A's and at times the H's in French, but I did. Thank you. Merci beaucoup, mon ami. Do you remember one moment during those 3 days where you had to trick your brain, partner?
Yeah. I wouldn't say a specific moment, but when it got to the 50s of that crazy match, that's when I really had to trick my brain, because I was hearing a lot of the outside noise. The grounds at Wimbledon were just murmuring, talking about the match that we were playing on court 18. So that was something that I knew at that point we were in a very surreal match, and I was having a surreal experience, and everyone was, tuning in. It wasn't until I got off the court that second day when we didn't finish that I realized how big of a story that match had become. I just thought, okay, yeah, it was going to be big in the tennis world, but it was just big in the world, period. And that actually surprised me a lot.
And as when you realized just that it had become really bigger than tennis, did you have to remind yourself of anything to not lose your focus? Because we've talked about digging in, John, that sometimes you never know when these big moments come in life, whether you're going to grab the moment or let the moment grab you.
Yeah, no, exactly. But at that point, I was, of course, so tired. And it was about 10 o'clock at night, because over there in London in the summer, it doesn't get dark till about 9:30, 9:45. So at that point, I didn't want to think about the match anymore. I just wanted to eat some food, drink some water, and try to get some sleep. I remember sleeping terribly that night. I had a lot on my mind, and I was almost overtired that I couldn't sleep well. So I didn't really read too much into the match at all. I didn't read anything online or anything like that. I just wanted to try to get to bed and eat some food and see if I could will myself to get out of bed in the morning and go back to work.
And dig in. As we become friends, you just played some tennis this weekend. And as a fellow American, forget the friendship, you make me so proud to be an American. I know what the 4th of July means to you, what it means to be an American.
Yeah.
What's the best part of being from the USA?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. This, I think you and I, Tripper, are obviously biased, but I think it's the greatest country in the world. This is the land of opportunity, that everyone is afforded the same opportunity to go after their dreams. If they work hard, if you make good decisions, if you respect the right people and you look up to the right people, and you just, again, I think the most important thing in this country, if you make good decisions, you will succeed in life. And there's everything at our disposal in this great country to do great things. And it's one that I've experienced as well. I've always considered myself someone who's been pretty dedicated to my craft and a very disciplined person. And I've looked up to it to a lot of the right people, and over the course of my life, I think I've made a lot of good choices, and because of that, this country has given me a lot in return. So I'm very, very grateful for that, and I never will ever lose sight of it either.
And what a way to pay it back. You had an injury that you suffered in the first major in the Australian Open. You played some tennis this past weekend. How'd you feel, partner?
Actually, Tripp, I felt surprisingly well. I mean, it was my first tennis match since February. I played a tournament in Mexico. I did well in that tournament, and I flew back to Dallas, and I was getting ready for our big stretch of events, Indian Wells in California, and then Miami after that, which I've historically done well at. And I was going to then, of course, after that, get ready to go over to Europe and play in the clay court season. But then our tennis season came to a halt. Really, the whole world just sort of stopped. And it took everyone by surprise, took me by surprise, selfishly, in my tennis world. So I hadn't played a match since February. And I went out there in Atlanta. Granted, it wasn't a huge pressure situation. It was just a chance to get out there and play with my friends in a semi-competitive atmosphere. And I thought I fared pretty well. So I stayed in shape during this time because just as myself and the hockey guys and NBA guys and NFL guys, you have to stay in shape when our sport resumes. You don't want to be caught off guard in my case, when tennis resumes, and I don't want to be in bad shape. So I want to try to stay ahead of the curve, and that's what I've been doing.
Hey, I'm in a volleyball back and forth, really not volleyball, but volley back and forth here in this hot stove digging in with you, John, from hockey, tennis, hockey. One more here on tennis, maybe then we'll go to how you became a massive Caniac.
Yeah.
It's a fluid situation, but the U.S. Open mean to the United States in New York? I mean, I remember you're living in Texas. One of my favorite moments in my life is President George W. Bush throwing that strike Yankee Stadium after 9. I mean, one of my favorite moments. So what will tennis mean, the U.S. Open, celebrating our country?
Yeah, well, look, I think as of right now, the U.S. Open is on the schedule. I think it's very important that we get back to playing. Of course, first and foremost, we need to do it in a safe manner. Can't be reckless. Got to make sure everyone is safe, the players, the volunteers, the coaches. It's realistically, it could be a tough task, but it's USTA as of right now is US Open happen because there are obstacles that they have through in order to make this happen. And as we sit right now, I don't know if the US Open is going to go on, but I do know if it happens, I'll be ready. I think it's very important for all sports to get back on TV and to maybe sort of help begin this healing process in our country from this pandemic. So look, me just as a sports fan in general, I want to see all sports come back in a safe way. And of course, I want to see the US Open come back. That would be a great way to get our sport of tennis back in the spotlight. One of our 4 biggest tournaments, here in America, it's our US Open. More than likely won't be fans there, which would stink, but it's better than the alternative. And that's not playing at all.
Well, I'm going to tell you, partner, closest I'll ever get to Jim Craig. But if you're playing, I'm going to be watching, digging in for you with the American flag draped all over me like Jim Craig did after the Miracle on Ice.
Yeah.
Wearing that beautiful T-shirt for those tuning in on YouTube, not the audio portion of our podcast. Tell us, when did you first fall in love with the Hurricanes and really set the stage to be a colossal Caniac?
Yeah, I'll tell you when it was. It was 1997 in Carolina. Came from Hartford down to Carolina. I'm from Greensboro. I'm not from Raleigh. So they played 2 years literally in my backyard, 10 minutes away from my house at the Greensboro Coliseum. And prior to the Canes coming to North Carolina, I did not know anything about hockey. I never watched hockey. I never what was on TV, I would flip right through it. And this was when I was, 10, 11 years old. I was watching basketball, football. But when they came to Greensboro for 2 years, I fell in love with the team. And they were actually really good. They made the playoffs in the old Greensboro Coliseum as well. So that's when I fell in love with the sport and fell in love with the ever since. So what are we now? 23 years into my fandom, and I'm still going strong with them for sure.
But you're bringing back memories, because I remember our broadcast position and really the game that determined the series against the Bruins. And Marty Jelena had a chance to win in overtime. A little bad puck luck, and Anson Carter, a future Hurricane, scored, and then Boston won in Game 6. I remember that like it was yesterday, calling that game. If you had to, from then until now, extract and describe 3-4 of your favorite moments being a Caniac, what would they be?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a great question. I was there. So I remember when the Canes won the Cup, I was not able to go to any of the Stanley Cup games, but I was able to go to the Eastern Conference Finals games against Buffalo. And I think I was playing tennis tournaments out in the summer, of course, like I always was. But against Buffalo in that Eastern Conference Final, when Brind'Amour sent that puck home, that was in Game 7. I mean, I was at Game 7 against Buffalo, and I remember there were lots of, and I was sitting up high in the nosebleed. There were lots of Buffalo fans around, and we got to shut them up. That right there, because I was there at the old RBC, now PNC, that was my favorite moment, I think, in person, for sure, no doubt about it. But then, of course, getting to watch them on TV and, pull them through and have, see Captain Brind'Amour lift the cup. I mean, it's the greatest thing ever. I still have that, newspaper clipping framed. I framed it myself. I did this terrible job. It's actually somewhere in my garage. It's so bad. It's a terrible job I did at framing, but Brind'Amour holding the cup up. I mean, that was absolutely amazing. And then really that whole Stanley Cup run was incredible. Down 2-0 to Montreal in the first round. From that point on, they were, I think, seemed destined at that point. So it was that year, of course, to any Canes fans is probably the most special.
I had no idea until this past season that you were the Caniac that you are. And I like to go down to the coach's office before my bench interview to give those guys a little comic relief. So I'm in there, usually we're carving each other, Rod, Jeff Daniels, Dean Schnauf, and in you walk with our owner, Tom Dundon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who's John Isner? And so you and I have, the line from the movie Jerry Maguire, you had me from hello. All right, partner. So you've been in the locker room, you've gotten to know the coaching staff and the players. And I know that a couple of these guys have had the privilege of hitting the court with you.
Yeah.
Who is good? Who's not so good? And talk about their strengths and weaknesses.
So, yeah, I played in Raleigh, when it was, but played with Willie, Turbo, Marty Nachos, and I think it was just those three guys. And I actually say they're all really, really good. But Willie, I hate to toot his horn. I like to give him crap when I can. He's actually very good. I mean, he's, for me, if I see someone playing tennis, you can just tell if they're a natural or not. And he's a natural. And if tennis was a sport he wanted to focus on, he could have played pro tennis for sure. I mean, he has all the strokes, all the movement, all the shots. He's got a slice back and all these little nuances of the game he has figured out from very little time spent on the court. So Willie was very impressive. I hear he's like a scratch golfer as well. He's just one of those guys that, put any sort of instrument in his hand, he's going to be good at it. And so I was surprised to see that, and he was incredible at tennis.
For all I know, I'm going to give you a chance here with an Isner overhead slam. I mean, best serve in the history of the game. Tell the story. I'm going to let you take it, and it's going to be self-deprecating to me about when I texted you last week saying I was watching the movie Wimbledon.
Yeah. So sitting at home, I get a text from Tripper, and he sends me this long text about this great movie that he's watching. And he starts off the text. I really should actually read it verbatim. And he says, I'm really digging this movie I'm watching, this movie called Wimbledon. It's an unbelievable movie. Got some epic scenes. I got goosebumps all over my body and so forth and so on. And I'm like, wait a minute, this can't be the same movie, dude. I'm thinking in my head, did they make another Wimbledon, or what is he actually watching? Is he watching a documentary and not the actual movie called Wimbledon? But sure enough, Tripp, you thought that Wimbledon, the movie, was a good sports movie. And in my opinion, it's maybe the worst one of all time. I mean, the tennis scenes are horrendous. the story behind the movie is horrendous. I mean, their lead character, how bad he was at tennis, and him playing that game on center court of Wimbledon, it was an abomination of a movie and a real stain on the sport of tennis, I think. And you initially thought that movie, I think you might even have said epic. And I had to check you and make sure you were watching the same movie. But you did backtrack a little bit and realize that the movie was terrible. You must have been 10 minutes in or something and you jumped the gun. But at least you now realize that movie's not that good.
Well, I got to come clean now, partner. I've been trying to get some advertisers here for the podcast. So I was really making a play for Velveeta, one of the great cheese producers. And, because that movie just marinates cheese.
It's full of cheese. I mean, and you know what? Were you watching it on HBO or something? Because I was flipping through HBO. There's like 10 HBOs or whatever, and it was on. And I saw it was on one of the 508 was the channel, and I'm like, I'm not even going to give it the time of day. I will not click on it. But it might have been what happened to you, and Wimbledon caught your eye. We've been texting, and you turned it on and thought it was good, but sure enough, it's a terrible movie.
Oh, geez, it's full blown cheddar. It's gotten enough attention. You had a chance to carve me, and you did well. But speaking of turning on the television, it's not going to be long before you turn on your television, and you're going to see Game 1 of the Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Rangers. How do you see it? What are the Hurricanes going to really need to do well to beat that good young Ranger team?
Well, yeah, it's a very good young Ranger team, and look, time will tell. It's just difficult. When you have teams that have had a layoff like this, of course, you're going to try to practice as hard as you can and scrimmage as hard as you can. But it's any athlete will tell you when you've had a long layoff, there's nothing like the real thing, the real game. So that Game 1 is going to be competitive. It's going to be crazy. It's probably going to be some mistakes made. Whoever makes the least amount of mistakes and feels most comfortable out there is probably going to win. But we do know that the Rangers lately, the last couple of years, have actually had the Hurricanes number, even though the Canes have always performed better in the standings. So we'll see what happens. I still like the Canes' chances. We'll see who the Rangers throw in net against Carolina. Lundqvist always seems to play his best games against the Canes. What was that game this year? I mean, it was in Raleigh. He stopped 49 of 50 shots, and they won 2-1 or 3-1. I remember watching that game, and for some reason, he always steps up against the Canes. It's really, really frustrating. But let's hope that doesn't happen in round 1.
Well, I'm going to tell you, and I don't have much credibility on this because my pro career as a player was so short, but I remember 2009 and the Boston Bruins swept the Hurricanes in the season series. And that actually made me feel good about the second round matchup. Yeah. And that ends up in Scott Walker ending it in Game 7 in overtime.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. So that is what happens. It's a lot of times like in tennis, if you beat someone 5 times in a row or whatever it is, it's tough to beat them that 6th time. So look, Carolina, I guess the one good thing from this layoff is that the Canes are starting to get healthy. They had a lot of injuries towards the end of the year. We all know that. And so we'll see if that pays off.
Okay, I'm going to volley for a second back to tennis before getting back to Caniacville. You did a Zoom with Sebastian, Tavo, Turbo, as you call him, Nino, and Jordan Stahl was on it. Sorry, Jordan Stahl was on it. They asked, and so you were asked the question is, who's the toughest of, some of the guys that you've beaten them all, but Novak Djokovic, Rafa Nadal, Roger Federer, and you said Novak. Why is he so tough?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, when you're talking about those 3 guys, you're absolutely splitting hairs because those guys' top level is something that this game has never seen. I mean, you can argue that these are the 3 greatest players of all time, and they've all been playing in the same era. So, but for me, I give from my personal standpoint, the toughest to play is Novak. I mean, when he's locked in, he is virtually unbeatable. His top level, I think, is maybe slightly better than those guys. And he's just maybe not as adored as Roger and Rafa, but his top level is absurd. He doesn't have any weakness. He moves incredibly well. He does everything well on the court. And I remember one time, this was probably 3 years ago in Beijing. I was in the quarterfinals. That's a pretty big tournament of ours, and going up against Novak, and I'm playing him in a night match. And I wake up that morning and I look at the forecast, and I see that it's the high on the day is going to be like 49 degrees, the high. And I'm thinking, oh crap, this stinks. I'm already playing Novak. He's really tough to play in China. He always wins there. And it's not going to be hot at all. I like hot conditions. The ball moves through the court a little bit faster. And I went out there and it was probably 44, 45 degrees, and he just cleaned my clock. I couldn't crack an egg out there, and he was locked in. So that's my point. Like, when he's locked in, he's so tough to beat. He doesn't have to guess on anything, even on my serve. He just anticipates so well, and he moves so well. There's really nothing you can do. And he ended up winning that event. I think he won 6-1, 6-0 in the finals. But that in that quarterfinal, he beat me 6-2, 6-2. It's probably one of the worst beatings I've ever taken in my professional career. So he, to me, is the toughest to play.
What's your favorite surface?
A lot of people think, because I'm so big and because I had this big serve, that I like playing on fast courts. And it's actually not the case at all. I mean, I don't mind playing on fast courts. I prefer to play on a medium to slow court that has a high bounce. That's my best surface. That's my bread and butter. It's one of the reasons I've always done well in Indian Wells in Miami. Because the weather's hot, the courts aren't too fast, and the ball bounces up high. And I really love playing on a hard court like that. I grew up playing on hard court, not really playing on too much clay courts and never playing on grass. So a hard court is what I'm most used to, and I like one that's slow to medium.
Well, you mentioned Miami, where you've not only done well, you won there, which I essentially I consider that to be a major partner. What's it like in the locker room? Like in hockey, that's one of the things I miss most about playing the game is being with the boys. I mean, when you're going to play a guy in the locker room, do you see him before the match? Does that vary? What's that like?
Oh yeah, you see him right before the match. Everyone has a mutual respect for each other. And in my estimation, all of us are actually pretty good friends. Most of the guys on tour, I say most of them, are very, very good guys, and I get along with all those guys. So, but it's a little bit awkward when you're about to go do battle in 10 minutes with someone, and he's beside you on the training table getting his ankles taped, you're getting your wrist taped or whatever. I mean, it's a little bit different, and it's even, I guess, more awkward after the match because everyone shows a lot of respect to each other, and the winner doesn't want to showboat or anything like that. Just tries to stay quiet and go about his business. So again, there's a great mutual respect amongst all of us. But look, that's the case. We're competitors every single day at tournaments, and we share the same locker room. So it's very, very unique and not something you ever see in a team sport, which is something I'm actually jealous of because I miss that. Not miss it. I wish I had that camaraderie that these team sports have, especially the hockey guys have. I mean, the hockey guys have the greatest culture in sports, in my opinion. Talk about a close-knit bunch. And I could see that from being in the locker room, poking my head in before the puck drop, and these guys are dialed in, and they're all good friends, and they just want to give it their all for each other, for their teammates, for their coaches, for their fans. It's a beautiful sight.
And one of the things I miss most is hockey players give it to each other. So for a little just comic temporary deviation, so you're playing Nadal, you're not saying right before the match, hey, Rafa, you don't want to go a size or two bigger on that shirt or those shorts. I mean, that'd be a way to get in his kitchen.
Yeah, there is some playful ribbing like that. I wouldn't do that to Rafa because he always has his headphones on for at least 30 minutes before, and he doesn't talk to anyone. He's dialed in. A guy like Roger, per se, who I'm a good friend with, I could give him a little dig and I could chirp him a little bit. He chirps back. He's not one that wears headphones and just locks in. Like that's what Rafa does. Roger's a lot more relaxed about it. He's goofing around, telling jokes. I'm telling you, Roger Federer is, one of the greatest athletes of all time, the most popular tennis player and probably the greatest tennis player of all time. He is a goofy guy off the court, and a goofy in a very, very good way. He's got a great sense of humor, and he's just a good guy to have around. And our sport has been so lucky to have Roger around. But in all honesty, Tripp, he's he's one of the goofiest guys in the locker room, and you wouldn't think so because he's super refined, got this unbelievable image. But when he's back with the boys, he likes to have fun.
It's interesting because the brain's a muscle just like anything else, and you'd prefer not to overtax it. I bring that up because Justin Williams, who we just had on the podcast, your dear friend, you and Willie are pretty darn close. Any NHL warm-up, virtually every guy has a routine. Like if I'm interviewing Sebastian Aho at the bench, he wants to be out of there because right down to the second, he's doing specific things in warm-up. Justin Williams could sit there and have a conversation the whole warm-up, almost like you're talking about Roger before a match, and then somehow can turn it on in an instant. That, I think, prolongs your career.
Oh, it does. And this is actually something that I'm figuring out as I get older. And this is something that I realized in this little event I was playing in Atlanta this past weekend. You have to try to keep yourself relaxed and as calm as possible, because for someone like me, I'm 35, I've been playing forever. For someone like Willie, he's in his late 30s, he's been playing forever. It doesn't necessarily, we've had so many reps for me on the practice court and him on the ice. Look, everything is there. It's at our disposal. You just got to relax and let it happen. Tension, and you getting anxious on the ice or me on the court, that's what leads to bad performance. And, you just having tension in your body is just not good. And that's one of the things I realized in Atlanta. I wasn't nervous at all. It was a semi-competitive format, but no nerves. I was really relaxed out there and I was hitting the ball great, even though I haven't been practicing as much as I would have been if our tour was, had been going on the last few months. So look, it's always a constant battle. I think for me and all athletes, try to trick your brain, even though you are feeling a lot of pressure, a lot of nerves, you got to take pressure off of yourself. And that's what I try to do. And I try to tell myself that, and it's true, it's just a game. It's not the most important thing in the world. The most important thing in the world is family and friends and a lot of stuff for me off the tennis court. So if I keep that good perspective, I find that I'm able to play tension free and play my best.
Have I ever told you, or do you know what Cam Ward wrote on every one of his goalie sticks?
Mm-mm.
His dad, Ken, wrote it, told him at a young age, have fun. He writes it on his stick. And so at one point early in his career, so I'll never forget getting ready for Game 3 in Montreal.
Yeah.
And, here's a guy playing on the road, first playoff start. Montreal was a very good team. I mean, he stood on his head, and I asked him he wrote that on every stick is
Hornet's Nest too. I mean,
Hornet's Nest.
Yeah.
And I said, Wardo, why do you write have fun? And he said, because my dad always told me, the more fun you have, the better you play. Mm-hmm. So if you're within a match, do you ever, like you said, trick your brain, reinforce your brain? Hey, John, this is why I got into the sport in the first place, just for the sheer enjoyment. And then you make that good shift.
Oh, absolutely. And there have been countless times that I've failed in that regard, where I've wanted to win so bad that I have so much tension in my body that I literally prevent myself from winning because I want to win so bad, because I want it so much. For me, I want to be able to walk off the court, win or lose, knowing that I didn't beat myself. And there were times where tension in my body, me not able to go after my shots, caused me to lose a match. And those are the ones that you struggle to sleep at night over. The ones where I play tension free and I lose, I'll sleep like a baby at night. But it's those long nights where you get 2-3 hours of sleep because you're just thinking about all the stuff you could have done better. Those are the ones that sting. And as I've gotten older and more mature, I've done a better job at that, of limiting those times on the court where I've beaten myself because I've wanted to win so much. I mean, I still do it, but not as much. It's something that's tough to break out of. But look, that's the most important thing. If you can go out there and, as you said, have fun, play relaxed, and play without tension, that's when the game really is fun, and you'll find yourself playing your best.
Partner, if you're playing in a tournament or in the early stages of a major and one of the exterior courts, you're not playing without fans, but it's not like it's the same raucous of center court. So as hockey players are going to prepare to play without fans and tennis the same, from the sound of the ball to everything, how have you foreshadowed and thought about in your mind the most difficult part of that adjustment and how you adjust to it seamlessly?
Oh, it's going to be difficult, especially at the U.S. Open. If I'm playing the U.S. Open and there are no fans, I mean, I'm used to playing on a big court at the Open in front of 10,000 fans. You know, if you get on the big court in front of 23,000 fans, I mean, it's an incredible atmosphere in New York. And then when we get there in late August and there's going to be no fans, or I'm playing in Arthur Ashe Stadium in front of no one except for my coach and my trainer and my opponent's trainer and his coach, this is going to be super weird and super surreal. But it's going to be tough because, you know, just as in playoff hockey, you use your home crowd for energy and for adrenaline. And for me, I use the home U.S. Open crowd for energy and adrenaline. And you're not going to have that. There's no such thing as home court advantage or home ice advantage in this case in the NHL playoffs. So it's going to be tough. And I don't really know how I'm going to handle it. I think I'll handle it all right. But of course, we would all prefer to be playing in, you know, great atmospheres, whether the fans are booing us or cheering us on. You want that because that's what gives you the goosebumps and gives you that adrenaline. But we're not going to have that coming up here soon. It is what it is. We'll see how everyone handles it.
You're going to hit the ground running, and you're going to do it so much so you're going to end up having to make good on a bet. You always wear a baseball cap, but on the Zoom with, among others, Ryan Dizzy Dzingel, who wore a headband in warmups on Hartford Whaler night against the Kings. You said, hey, Canes win the cup. I always wear a cap, but I will wear a Hurricanes or Whalers headband on the court if the Canes win.
There's a no-brainer. That is a no-brainer. I would do that. So that would be unbelievable. It'll be a good trade-off to have because I've never worn a headband, but I'd do that in a heartbeat.
Well, let me tell you, I think the guy's name was Peter Colt in that cheesy movie Wimbledon. He didn't have that kind of style or mojo. Let me just tell you, it is.
That's it.
Who would you say over the years, funniest guy on tour?
Funniest American guy, I would say, is a good friend of mine, Sam Querrey. I've been playing with him for a long time. He's much like Larry David. He always gets himself in these awkward situations. It's hard to really, you know, single out a story here and there, but he is just an absolute classic. Funniest guy, not American. I'm going to go back and say Roger. I mean, I'm telling you, he's one of the goofiest guys on tour. Huge hockey fan, by the way. Loves his hockey. Knows Nino. Nita Ryder. And so he's a big fan of his hometown hockey team in Basel, Switzerland. So he's one of the funniest guys off the court, no doubt about it. He's a big WWE wrestling fan, which I like as well. And he's a big hockey fan. So Roger and I have a lot in common. So that's why I think he's the funniest.
I'm going to tell you a story. The Surges, which I love. Okay. So last year it was St. Louis, the Surge after the win against the eventual Stanley Cup champions, Evander Holyfield.
Yeah, that's right.
It was a back-to-back, so I'm walking to the plane with Peter Mrazek, a buddy of yours, and I didn't know you at the time. I hadn't met the great Iz. So anyways, I'm walking to the plane. I said to Mrazek, I go, Pietro, that's what I call him. I said, Pietro, how do you one-up that? And he goes, oh, maybe you get Roger Federer to come out and lead a Surge. And this is, you know, if he's a hockey fan, but I hate to break it to Roger Roger. I'd prefer to see the great Iz out there leading a Surge. You're just going to have to get creative.
Let's get creative. I've always thought about that because, you know, I know the Canes, you know, think about these things before the game. You know, a lot of times you don't want to jinx yourself. And of course, there's some times the Canes are going to lose on home ice and they're not going to be able to get that Surge. So what do? They just save it for the next home game. They just keep it in the holster.
That is correct.
I like it. I've always wondered that. I've never asked that question.
Yep. That's what they do. And they've been so good at home. There haven't been a lot of stretches where there was once or twice the boys said they finally won and they said, we forgot what the Surge was because it's been a stretch of games since we actually got it done. Yeah. I love the Surge. Don't you love it? Isn't it all about whatever sport, tennis, hockey? It's all about entertaining the fans and building that connection.
Absolutely. I think most people love it. There are some that don't. Don Cherry, for instance, he doesn't love it that much, but like I think it's great. It's put a great spotlight on hockey. I think in our country, and a great spotlight on the Canes. It's put the Canes up in in the big conversations, I guess. It's a good, fun-loving thing. It's, of course, no disrespect to the other team. They're off the ice. It's a way to have fun out there, and the fans love it, which is most important, of course. So when you do something that the fans love, you want to continue doing that.
Okay, we know who the headliners are going back to Greensboro when you fell in love with the Canes and became a Caniac. Who would be a closet Cane over those years that John Isner's a big fan of?
Back in the day?
Nope, anytime from then until now.
A former Canes?
No, former or current, a closet one. We know who the headliners are. Who would be one that you just appreciated maybe the intricacies of his game?
Okay, gotcha. I gotcha. That's a great question. I'll tell you who I really did like, and I still like to this day because I think he's phenomenal on TV, much like yourself, is Kevin Weeks. He's a great guy. He's been on the cast, hasn't he?
He's been on. This is going to go to his head. Shady 80 is a big fan of yours. He was all pumped up that you were coming on the pod and digging in. Yeah,
Weeksy's fantastic. Actually, my tennis coach is an Australian guy, and I actually introduced him to the sport of hockey. It's hands down his favorite sport. He is the biggest hockey fan out there. He's not a Cane fan, unfortunately, because he lives in the DC area. He's a big Capitals fan. So, anyways, that round one last year was pretty good for me. I got to rub that in his face. But going back to former Canes, golly, there's so many good ones. I don't want to. I mean, how do you not love Commodore? I mean, what a legend.
He was on the pod. Have you heard his stories on the pod?
Yeah, I know he was on the pod. I haven't listened to that one yet, though.
Oh man, it's a doozy.
Yeah. I gotta listen to that one, Tripper. We were talking about someone just the other day. Obviously, the former captain. He's not, he's a very well-known Cane, but Eric Stahl was a guy that I've always been a huge fan of. Just a class guy all the way, and still going strong. So, look, the Canes have had so many great players over the years, and a lot of high character guys on the team for sure.
Yeah, quality people. And as we wrap this thing up, when you look at sport and that we're citizens of the greatest country on the planet, what do you think are the things that sports teach you to be the best version of yourself? Because you're talking about high character guys.
Absolutely. They teach you about discipline, and I think respect, and especially in the team atmosphere so I played college tennis. So of course I love being part of a team sport, but something about being on a team is special is that, you don't want to let your guys down, but you also know that as long as you give your all and try your hardest, that even if you do fail or make a mistake, the guys really aren't going to be mad at you. I remember tough college tennis matches we lost. Of course, we wanted to win, but if I knew my teammate, he laid it all out there on the line, and he just came up a little bit short. Like, your team does not get mad at you. Your team has your back, and I think especially in hockey, and the players know that. I think that's the greatest thing about the culture of hockey is that the team has your back. They're always going to go to bat for you. I just those things in those team sports. Again, back to hockey, you want to. Have fun with the boys, but work hard every single day and just, go out there and win or lose as a team. It's not winning or losing isn't the most important thing, in my opinion. Of course, you always want to win, but it's just how you go out there and how you compete. That's all you can really ask for.
And then when you leave the court or you leave the rink, how has tennis for you made you the best version of yourself as a parent in the most important areas of life?
Well, yeah, I think it's for me, it's shined a good spotlight, and it's given me great perspective. I should say that in the sense that, I've always been very disciplined throughout my professional career, but over the years, as the years have gone on in my career, I've started to realize that tennis is not the most important thing. Of course, it's very, very important, but family comes first and foremost, always. And I've learned a lot of great things through the sport of tennis about how to be disciplined, how to train hard, how to take care of myself. It's not just what you see on TV, on the match court, or on the, watching a hockey game live. It's everything that I think my sport has taught me away from the court. That's what I do in the gym. That's more stretching. That's 10 minutes of stretching or 10 minutes of more lifting here. All those things add up to a very, in my case, a long, successful career. So I think the discipline that I've shown and that this sport has shown me that I've needed to exude has been very, very important for me.
2 questions, and I'm going to say bon voyage. The game is for sale if you're willing to pay the prices. And please tell me, I'll fall on the grenade if I'm wrong, but hasn't tennis changed? I mean, you have a lot of great years in front of you.
Uh-huh.
But didn't it used to be that if you're in your mid-30s, you're cooked? Put a fork in you.
It's done a complete 180.
Why?
Tennis is just like turning into golf. It's crazy. Guys are doing well into their 30s, mid-30s, late 30s, and I'm no exception there. Roger has set the bar so high. I think he's about to turn 39 here soon, and he's number 3 in the world or something like that. So, yeah, look, I think it just goes to show if you take care of yourself and invest in yourself, especially on the tennis court, that's what we're seeing, that you can have a long, successful career. And a lot of guys are seeing that. And now 20 years ago, that wasn't the case at all. Once you got to 30 or 32, you were out the door. It's not the case now. Guys are very, very disciplined. I see it firsthand. I try to emulate the guys that are most disciplined on tour. So it's a copycat game, and you see how hard these guys work and you see the little things that they do off the court to keep their body fit, to keep their mind fit. And you try to do that and you try to emulate it. And that's what I'm doing. And that's why I'm playing so well right now. And
lastly, we talked earlier, as you really gave it to me about the movie Wimbledon being cheese.
So bad.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, you know what? Hey, I have to own it. But I'm going to end with this, because another movie was Twins, where you had the short guy and Danny DeVito and the tall guy and Schwarzenegger. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, and I remember when I was a kid, because I was a tennis player, not very good, no power. But Michael Chang was a guy that I liked. I want to say he won the French at one point.
At 19 years old.
Can a small guy in this day and age in tennis, talking like a 5'7", 5'8" guy, if he has all of that criteria that we talked about investing in yourself, can a smaller guy flourish in the game of tennis?
Oh, absolutely. But that's a beautiful thing about tennis. I mean, we really come in all shapes and sizes. There's one guy, a good friend of mine, he's probably the smallest guy on tour, and he's ranked like 12 in the world right now, and he's no taller than 5'5". He's from Argentina. Diego Schwartzman is his name. We were actually planning on playing doubles together. You talk about twins. We were going to play doubles together in the Rome event this year. Unfortunately, it got postponed. So we're gonna rekindle that later on whenever our tour resumes. But he's a guy that, look, he's little. He doesn't have much power, but he's got a lot of good attributes on the court, and he uses those to his advantage. So for sure, look, when you can be little and do a lot of good things.
Okay, I'm going to leave you with this. It's perfect. There is a Twitter handle. We joke about it on the plane with the coaches that it's an Argentinian guy from Buenos Aires. He rates Rod's ties and he rips him, because Rod certainly doesn't have great neckwear. So Diego, we talk about it on the plane, and Rod and Jeff Daniels, Dean Chenault, and
gosh,
they take a break from doing film, and I say, did you see the rating that Rod got on his tie? And it's some Argentinian guy. So Diego, are you willing to take the homework assignment before hopefully you come back on the pod and dig in and make your doubles partner a Caniac?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to do that. He's going to become a Caniac. I don't think he's ever watched the sport of hockey, but I'm going to introduce it to him for sure. He likes his soccer. Not really my style. So I'll probably watch a little soccer with him if he watches some hockey with me.
Okay. That is your homework assignment. Messi, he's an Argentinian. Well, let's just make him a Caniac.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'm so proud and grateful for the friend you become, the patriot that you are, and the Hurricanes have no greater Caniac. Thanks for digging in with me.
Thank you, Tripper. It was a pleasure, my man.
Thank you to the great John Isner. And I want to remind everybody that you can find our podcast on Twitter and Instagram @DigInTrip. You can also find us via video on YouTube, and we encourage you to rate with honesty the podcast, and if you are or are not enjoying it.